Invasion begins. The arrival of the aliens. The sky above Earth darkened as massive shapes moved silently through the atmosphere. Their surfaces glinted like polished metal, catching the sunlight as if the entire sky had become a mirror reflecting an alien presence. Millions of humans looked up in disbelief and fear as these ships larger than cities themselves hovered effortlessly above continents. Their shadows stretched for miles and the ground beneath trembled from the faint gravitational pull emanating from these enormous vessels. The aliens were confident in their superiority. They had conquered dozens of worlds across countless star systems, and Earth was supposed to be another easy prize. Their leaders gathered in the command deck of the flagship and laughed at the tiny blue planet spinning below them. They called it primitive and unworthy of resistance. They mocked the humans' simple technology and imagined the planet would fall in a matter of hours as they prepared. Their initial bombardment. The humans on the surface moved quickly. Soldiers and civilians alike ran through streets preparing shelters and mobilizing defenses as radar stations buzzed with information about the incoming ships. The human military leaders knew that their weapons were no match for the alien technology, but they had something the invaders had not calculated. They had courage, they had adaptability, and they had something that could never be replicated in simulations. A young commander named Elias stood on the observation tower of a military base watching the alien fleet. His jaw clenched as he studied their formations. He could see the confidence in their movements and the arrogance in their patterns. He knew that brute force alone would not stop them, but human ingenuity could find cracks in even the most perfect armor. He gathered his officers and whispered plans that relied on speed deception and the environment around them. The aliens fired the first strike, and enormous beams of energy rained down on the cities below. Buildings crumbled into rubble and fire consumed streets, but the humans did not break. They moved like water flowing around rocks. They used tunnels, overpasses, and forests as cover, striking back whenever they could with whatever weapons they had. The aliens were shocked by the lack of surrender and the unexpected ferocity of the humans. Their simulations had never prepared them for a species that could turn even the simplest tools into deadly traps. The commander of the flagship narrowed his eyes as he watched a group of humans disable a drone with nothing more than a homemade EMP device. It was inefficient by their standards, but effective enough to destroy their expectations. The human cities were in chaos, yet they were not defeated. Firefighters, soldiers, and volunteers worked side by side in a display of unity that the aliens could not understand. Even as buildings fell, the humans rescued each other and fought back. Simultaneously, the sky glowed with the clash of alien energy weapons and human counterattacks like lightning, striking against stone. The aliens began to whisper to each other in disbelief. How could such a primitive species resist? How could they even hope to survive? The first 3 hours of the invasion were already a test, and the humans were passing it brilliantly. From hidden vantage points, they struck the aliens' supply lines and communications, creating confusion and hesitation among the invaders. The flagship trembled slightly as a human missile found a weak point in its hull, not enough to destroy it yet, but enough to warn the aliens that Earth would not surrender easily. In a small town miles from the main cities, a group of civilians armed with nothing more than rifles and homemade explosives managed to force a landing craft to retreat. While above them, fighter jets dodged alien patrols and carried out precise strikes. The aliens realized that every human on this planet was a potential threat, that even the smallest action could change the tide of battle. They had underestimated humans completely, and their arrogance was starting to crumble. The young commander Elias watched the horizon as smoke rose from the cities and smiled, knowing that this was only the beginning of something the aliens had never expected. The humans were ready, and the aliens would soon learn that Earth was not a prize to be taken easily, but a fortress defended by an apex species that refused to bow first contact. Humans strike back as the alien ships loomed over Earth. Their commanders were certain the invasion was inevitable. They expected humans to crumble beneath the first wave of destruction. Instead, something unexpected happened. The very moment the alien troops hit the ground, they were met with fierce resistance, not from soldiers alone, but from every corner of humanity. From children using slingshots to farmers wielding makeshift weapons, Every human on Earth fought back in ways the invaders had never anticipated. The first alien assault teams landed in major cities aiming to crush resistance with their superior firepower. But what they found was chaos, not the kind they had seen before, but a different kind of chaos. Humans did not break apart in fear, but worked together. Even as buildings collapsed, around them they had no clear strategy, no formal orders, but they had something more valuable than tactics. They had the will to protect their home. The aliens were thrown into disarray as makeshift barricades were set up in streets, and civilians fired from windows using whatever weapons they could find. It was not an organized attack. It was a human instinct to survive, and the aliens had underestimated it completely. They had assumed that once the humans saw their advanced weaponry and towering war machines, they would flee or surrender. Instead, they were met with a resistance that made them question everything about their plans. In the heart of the city, Elias watched the chaos unfold from a high vantage point. His hands gripped the railing tightly as he observed the aliens' movements. The enemy troops marched with precision through the streets, but every step they took was met with human ingenuity. A civilian used a fishing net to trap one of their robots, while another group set off homemade explosives that sent shockwaves through the alien ranks. The humans didn't have advanced tech, but they had a resource the aliens couldn't predict. Their ability to adapt and fight with anything they had was their greatest weapon. From the command center, Elias barked orders to his fellow commanders. They weren't going to win by trying to match the aliens' strength, but by exploiting their weaknesses. Every attack had to be timed perfectly. Each move had to be about gaining an advantage, however small. The alien forces seemed unstoppable at first with their advanced plasma rifles and heavy artillery. But as hours passed, they began to slow down. They had never seen humans fight like this. They had never seen people who had so little but refused to give up. The first signs of alien confusion began to show as their coordinated attacks faltered. The alien commanders tried to regain control of their forces, but the humans' unpredictable tactics had already begun to destabilize their precision. The humans' defenses weren't conventional, but they were effective, and that's what made them dangerous. In one city block, a group of humans with no military training turned the tables on an elite alien assault team using nothing more than fire traps and blinding lights. They knew the land they were fighting on. They knew the terrain in ways the aliens couldn't even begin to understand, and that knowledge gave them the advantage. After a few hours of fighting, the alien troops began to hesitate. Their attacks grew more erratic and less coordinated. Elias could see it happening before his eyes. He didn't want to celebrate too soon, but this was more than he had hoped for. The humans were gaining ground and forcing the invaders to rethink their strategy. It was a small victory, but it was a victory nonetheless. The alien commanders watched in horror as their once perfect plans began to unravel. They thought humans would collapse after the first wave of destruction, but instead they saw human strength in its rawest form. The aliens thought they were dealing with a primitive species, but they now realized that humanity was anything but. It wasn't just about fighting, it was about fighting for everything that mattered, for Earth, for family, for survival. Every human soldier and civilian was part of something greater than themselves. They were part of a united front that no alien force had ever encountered. The invaders were beginning to feel something they had never expected on any of the planets they had conquered: fear. They didn't fear human strength alone. They feared what would happen if humanity found its true power. If the humans realized how much they could fight together, if they realized the depth of their potential. The aliens tried to regroup, their forces scattered across different regions of the planet, hoping to create a plan that would overpower the humans, but they were too late. Their arrogance had already cost them. And now the humans would make them pay. Elias couldn't help but smile. He knew they had only begun to scratch the surface of what humans could do when they were pushed to their limits, as more and more alien forces retreated in disarray. The humans prepared for the next wave of the battle. They were ready to do whatever it took to protect their home. Earth was their planet, and no one would take it from them. Chaos on the ground. Humanity fights as one. As the sun set over the ravaged cities, the aliens could no longer deny the truth that humanity was not the weak prey they had expected to find. It wasn't just soldiers who fought back, it was every human who took a stand against the invaders. From the streets of the cities to the rural towns, the earth itself seemed to pulse with resistance. Everywhere the aliens went, they encountered humanity's will to survive and protect what was theirs. It wasn't just tactics or weaponry that turned the tide. It was the heart of human courage and unity, even in the face of overwhelming odds. The first signs of the aliens' downfall came in unexpected places. A small town known for its farming community became the birthplace of a strategy no one had expected, a strategy born of human resilience. The townspeople had no advanced tech, no military training, but they had something that the aliens could never predict. They knew the land, they knew the environment, and they knew how to fight for their homes. The first alien patrols were ambushed as they crossed the narrow bridge leading into the town. Their advanced sensors and weapons couldn't help them when they were caught in the thick fog of their own confusion. The humans had used their knowledge of the land to set up traps that confused the alien forces. They used their farming tools to create deadly barricades and rigged explosives from basic materials. The aliens who had once laughed at humans for their primitive ways now found themselves stuck in a deadly game. They had no chance of winning. Even in the largest cities, the resistance was growing stronger. Every corner became a battleground where alien patrols were constantly harassed by the unexpected tactics of the humans. Human soldiers fought with every tool at their disposal, not because they had superior weapons, but because they refused to back down. The aliens had underestimated them, but now they were beginning to realize that every human was a force to be reckoned with. As the aliens struggled to regain control, their leaders could see their armies breaking apart. The once perfect invaders who had come to conquer Earth were now running in disarray. Their communications failed as more and more human counterattacks hit their command centers and supply lines. It wasn't just the military that fought back, it was the civilians too. In one town, a group of mothers used their knowledge of the local sewage system to set up an ambush that trapped an entire alien squad. Without hesitation, they worked together to disable their enemy and send them running. The humanity of Earth was showing its full strength. The aliens couldn't fight against this kind of unity and determination. They had no plan for human creativity, no way to counteract the simple yet brilliant strategies that were turning the tide. The humans were no longer a group of individuals. They were a force unified by a single purpose, and that purpose was to protect their home. Every alien ship that entered the atmosphere was met with deadly fire from human defense forces using missiles and makeshift weapons alike. It wasn't enough to just defend Earth now, it was about taking the fight to the invaders. The aliens had come expecting an easy conquest, but now they were fighting for survival. Against every expectation, humans turned their survival into an art form. They didn't just wait to be rescued, they fought with everything they had and used their environment to outsmart the invaders. In the heart of the capital city, Elias stood alongside his fellow commanders, watching the aliens retreat back into their ships. In the distance, the towering alien warships began to take off into the sky, but their flight was not graceful. It was full of panic and desperation. Their formations were disjointed. Their ships barely held together as they fled from the relentless human forces who had found a way to turn the aliens' technology against them. Elias knew that this was a turning point in the war. The aliens had not expected a resistance like this. They had assumed that Earth's population was weak and unprepared, but they had underestimated the heart of humanity, and that mistake was going to cost them everything. The battle had only just begun, but Elias could already see that the humans were no longer fighting to survive. They were fighting to win, and the aliens would soon learn that Earth was not a planet to be conquered, but a planet that would stand tall against anyone who dared to challenge it. The chaos on the ground became more controlled as the days passed. The humans were learning how to fight back, and in doing so, they were gaining the upper hand. It wasn't just about defeating the aliens anymore. It was about showing them that humans would never be broken. The resistance was no longer just a group of scattered soldiers. It was a unified force that could not be stopped, and the aliens would soon find themselves facing an opponent far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. Alien pride shattered. The first major defeat. The alien fleet had come to Earth with a sense of superiority that could not be shaken. They believed themselves invincible, and Earth was merely an insignificant obstacle in their grand conquest. Their commanders had been confident that their technology and advanced weaponry would crush humanity within hours. They had never accounted for the heart of Earth's defenders and the ingenuity that each human carried within them. As the days passed, the aliens began to realize that their plans were failing. Their once perfect strategies were unraveling with every passing hour, and the Earth beneath their feet was becoming a battleground of their own making. In the heart of the alien command ship, the leaders of the invasion stood in disbelief. The humans were not surrendering, and their resistance was growing stronger by the hour. Reports came in of alien warships being ambushed by human forces using weapons they could not comprehend. It seemed like every time they made a move, the humans were there to counter it. The aliens had never expected this kind of fight. They had been prepared for a quick conquest, not for a fight that would drag them into the depths of their own arrogance. Their pride had been shattered in small but powerful moments. Every time an alien warship was hit by human fire, they felt the sting of defeat, not just in their vessels, but in their pride. The once mighty invaders now found themselves under constant attack. The humans didn't wait for orders, they didn't hesitate. They fought as if their very survival depended on it, and in many ways, it did. The first major defeat for the alien forces came in a moment of absolute shock. The aliens had launched a full-scale attack on a city they believed to be a major human stronghold. They aimed to crush it and send a message to Earth. But as they arrived over the city, they were met with a surprise they had not anticipated. The human forces had learned from their previous encounters and had set a trap. Using alien technology they had scavenged and modified, human forces had set up a barrage of missiles that locked onto the incoming alien ships. As the first wave of alien ships descended to strike the city, they were hit with a barrage of fire that tore through their shields and crippled their vessels. The attack had been swift and precise. The aliens tried to regroup and retaliate, but they were already losing ground. The humans had used their knowledge of the alien technology against them and had managed to strike at the heart of their invasion force. The alien commanders scrambled to organize their remaining forces, but it was already too late. The humans had gained the upper hand and the alien fleet was falling apart. The second wave of alien reinforcements arrived only to find their ships under attack from every direction. Human forces launched airstrikes and ground assaults, simultaneously catching the aliens off guard and leaving them scrambling to defend their positions. The alien ships that had been invincible only days ago now appeared fragile and vulnerable. The humans were not the primitive species the aliens had believed them to be. They were adaptable and they had learned quickly. From makeshift weapons to reverse-engineered alien technology, the humans fought like a swarm of predators attacking in unison. The battlefields were littered with the wreckage of alien warships, and as the day wore on, the aliens could feel their confidence slipping away. Elias stood on the front lines watching as his forces coordinated strike after strike. It was a sight he would never forget. Alien warships were scattered across the sky, some limping back into space, while others were destroyed in midair. Their engines sputtered, and their once pristine hulls were shattered by the overwhelming force of humanity's counterattack. For the first time in the invasion, the aliens felt fear. Not fear of the humans themselves, but fear of their own pride, and the realization that they had underestimated Earth. They had come expecting an easy conquest, and now they were fighting for survival. The humans had turned the tide, and the alien commanders could see it was only a matter of time before Earth would no longer be under threat. The loss was more than just a strategic defeat for the aliens. It was a blow to their entire empire. Their pride had been shattered in front of their entire fleet, and there was no going back. They had been humbled by the very species they had once laughed at. In the aftermath of the battle, Elias couldn't help but feel a surge of triumph, but he knew that this was only the beginning. The aliens had been defeated in their first major confrontation, but there were still many battles to fight. Earth had won this round, but the war was far from over, as the alien fleet retreated into space. Elias and his forces watched them go. The humans had proven their strength and resilience, and the aliens now knew that Earth was not a world to be taken lightly. Humans unleashed. Full-scale retaliation. The alien fleet retreated into space, leaving behind the wreckage of their ships and the shattered remains of their pride. But the humans knew that their victory was not final. The retreat of the invaders was just the beginning. Earth had proven that it could stand against the aliens. But now, humanity had to make sure the aliens understood that Earth was not a place for conquest. It was a place where invaders would meet their end. With each passing day, the human forces grew stronger. They had learned from their mistakes and had used every moment of the alien invasion to their advantage. From their ability to adapt to their environment to their resourcefulness in weaponry, the humans had become an unstoppable force. The time had come to take the fight to the aliens and show them that Earth was no longer a defenseless planet, but one ready to fight for its survival. From all corners of the Earth, human forces gathered, preparing for the next phase of the war. The warships and fighter jets that had once been used only in small skirmishes were now organized into a single unified fleet. Under the leadership of Elias, humanity's military became a force that rivaled anything the aliens had ever seen. As the humans built up their defenses, they also began to develop new technologies using the alien tech. They had scavenged over the past weeks. Elias stood at the command center watching as his engineers worked tirelessly to reverse engineer the alien weaponry. They had already taken down a number of ships, but now they needed to be ready for the next wave. The aliens were not going to give up easily. They would return with more advanced strategies and greater firepower, but the humans were no longer going to be caught off guard. They were ready for whatever the aliens threw at them. And when the next battle came, the humans unleashed their fury in ways the invaders could never have anticipated. The aliens thought they could shake Earth's resolve by retreating, but what they didn't realize was that the humans had only been waiting for a reason to fight harder. When the aliens returned, they found themselves facing a force that fought with a new kind of fury. Humans no longer relied just on defense. They were now on the offensive. For the first time, the humans were able to turn the aliens' own technology against them. The humans had learned how to jam their communication systems and disable their shields using alien tech and Earth ingenuity. Alien ships that once appeared invincible were now vulnerable to human strikes, as the humans adapted the very weapons used against them to gain the upper hand. With every attack, the aliens suffered more and more losses. Their advanced warships that had once seemed unbeatable now lay in ruin, scattered across the Earth, and in the sky above, the human fleet was relentless. They hit the aliens from every angle, forcing them into a defensive position they had never thought they would face. The aliens began to retreat again, but it was clear that this was not just another tactical retreat. It was a panic flight as they tried to save what little remained of their forces. As the alien ships scattered, Elias gave the order for the final push. The humans would not stop until every last alien invader had been driven off their planet. The final battle raged on for hours, with humans fighting on the ground, in the air, and even in the vastness of space, using the full range of their newfound power. The aliens tried to regroup, but it was too late. Their pride had been shattered, and their forces were now in full retreat. As the last of the alien warships fled Earth's atmosphere, the humans stood victorious. They had taken their world back from the invaders. They had turned the tide of war and shown the galaxy that Earth was a force to be reckoned with. Elias stood at the edge of the command center, watching the retreating ships as they disappeared into the vastness of space. He knew that this battle was not just about saving Earth, but about showing the galaxy that humanity was not a species to be underestimated. The aliens had come expecting an easy conquest, but instead, they had encountered a species whose resilience and determination could not be matched. Earth had become a symbol of strength and unity. And the aliens would never forget the lesson they had learned that day. The humans were unstoppable, and no one would dare challenge them again. The war was far from over, but humanity had proven that they could rise against any enemy, and they would do whatever it took to protect their home. Last stand of the aliens. Humiliation and defeat. The alien forces had retreated into the void of space, but their defeat was not a clean exit, and their pride had been severely wounded. They had underestimated humanity's strength and resilience, and now they faced the consequences. Their leadership struggled to regain control of their remaining fleet as they licked their wounds and scrambled to patch up their shattered forces. The humans had done the unthinkable. They had turned the tide of battle in their favor with a combination of courage, ingenuity, and raw determination. The galaxy's greatest conquerors had been humbled by a planet they had thought weak and unworthy. As the Auri, remaining alien warships, limped through the void, they realized something far more terrifying than the humans' weapons. It was the realization that Earth had become a symbol of defiance, and the humans had made it clear they would not back down. The aliens had never faced a species that fought with such fury and resourcefulness, but they would soon learn that their defeat wasn't just the loss of a planet, it was the destruction of their own pride. The alien fleet's remaining commanders met in secret aboard their flagship as they discussed their next move. The conversation was filled with tension and desperation. They knew their chances were slim, but they had one last card to play. A plan was devised to strike at the heart of humanity's defenses with a final assault, one last desperate attempt to regain control of Earth. They would send everything they had left to crush the humans before they could rebuild completely. The humans, however, had anticipated this move. Elias and his commanders were already prepared. They knew that the aliens would not simply accept their defeat. They would come again. And when they did, they would find themselves facing humanity's full might. The human fleet had already been upgraded with alien technology, and the humans had trained themselves to use it to its maximum potential. The next alien assault was unlike anything the humans had seen before. The aliens threw everything they had at Earth in a final attempt to crush the spirit of humanity. Skies above the planet were filled with the massive warships of the invaders, their dark forms blotting out the sun as they descended toward Earth. They launched their attack with overwhelming force, hoping to break the human will to fight. But they had not counted on the humans' unwavering resolve. The human military had grown stronger in the days since the alien retreat, and now they were ready for the final confrontation. The battle raged for hours, with the heavens themselves shaking from the intensity of the conflict. The aliens' ships fired deadly beams of energy while humans retaliated with everything they had, from reverse-engineered alien weapons to human-made weapons of destruction. The battlefield was a chaos of fire and explosions as human forces stood their ground and held the line against the alien onslaught. The aliens' desperation was evident. They knew they could not win, but they had to try. They had no other choice but to push forward and hope that their final assault would break the humans' spirit. What the aliens didn't realize was that the more they fought, the more the humans became determined to see them defeated. Every human on Earth, from the soldiers on the front lines to the civilians hiding in shelters, had come together to fight for their planet. Their unity and spirit were unmatched, and the aliens were beginning to realize that they were no longer just fighting for control of Earth. They were fighting against a force far greater than any they had faced before. As the alien ships continued to rain destruction on Earth, Elias and his fleet moved with precision and power. They used their knowledge of alien technology and tactics against the invaders and began to dismantle the alien assault piece by piece. The alien warships that had once seemed invincible began to fall one by one, as the humans exploited every weakness they had discovered in their previous battles. The tide of the war shifted as the human fleet began to push back with renewed strength and purpose. The aliens, now desperate, tried to flee, but it was too late. The humans had learned too much from their enemies and had become too strong to be stopped. One by one, the alien warships were torn apart as the humans launched their final offensive. The aliens had hoped that their final strike would be the end of humanity, but instead it became their last stand. The human forces were relentless as they chased down the retreating ships, leaving no escape for the invaders. The humiliation of defeat was evident on the alien leaders' faces as they realized they had no hope of winning. This final assault was their last desperate gamble, and it had failed. The humans had won, and Earth had been secured. The alien fleet, once the most powerful in the galaxy, now lay in ruins scattered across the vastness of space. The humans had turned the tables on their would-be conquerors, and the aliens would never return. The galaxy would know the truth about Earth, that the humans were a force not to be trifled with, and no one would ever dare to challenge them again. As Elias stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched the final alien warship explode, in the distance he knew that this was a moment that would be remembered for centuries. The invaders had come to Earth expecting an easy conquest, but they had found something far more terrifying, a species willing to fight to the last breath to protect their home and their people. The alien fleet had been defeated and humanity stood victorious. Earth triumphant, humanity's apex reveal. The battle was over. The war had been won, and Earth stood victorious, as the last of the alien warships fled into the farthest reaches of space. The humans on the ground cheered and celebrated in the streets. The soldiers who had fought so bravely stood shoulder to shoulder with civilians who had never held a weapon, but had fought just as fiercely. To defend their homes, Earth had proven something that no one had ever expected. Humans were not a species to be underestimated. Humanity was no longer the insignificant species that the galaxy had once thought them to be. Earth was now a symbol of strength, resilience, and unity, and the aliens who had invaded would never forget the lesson they had learned that day. As Elias stood on the observation deck watching the retreating alien fleet, he could hardly believe what had just happened. He had witnessed the impossible, and now he saw that humanity had become something far greater than anyone had ever imagined. The planet had united as one force, fighting against an enemy that seemed unstoppable, and in doing so, they had changed the course of history. The humans had driven the invaders from their home with sheer determination and bravery. They had not relied on advanced technology or overwhelming firepower. They had relied on their minds, their hearts, and their will to survive. And in the end, it was enough. Earth had become a beacon to the galaxy, that humanity was not only capable of defending their world, but also of becoming a dominant force in the universe. Elias knew that Earth's victory was not just about the defeat of one alien race. It was the beginning of a new chapter for humanity. Earth was now ready to stand tall alongside the other species in the galaxy, but this time, it would not be as a subjugated species. It would stand as an apex predator, and the universe would soon learn that no one would dare to challenge humanity again. As the last of the alien ships disappeared into the distance, the humans turned their attention to the future. They had rebuilt their defenses and strengthened their military, with the knowledge they had gained from the alien invasion. But more importantly, they had learned something about themselves. They had discovered their true potential as a species, and they knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, united as one. Earth was their home, and they would defend it at any cost. The alien invasion had been a wake-up call, a reminder that no matter how advanced an enemy may be, humanity's spirit could never be broken. The galaxy would soon hear of Earth's victory, and it would spread like wildfire across the stars. The humans had risen from the ashes of what could have been their destruction, and now they were stronger than ever. The aliens had learned that humans could fight with everything they had when they were pushed to the brink, and that was a lesson they would never forget. As the humans looked to the future, Elias felt a sense of pride that he had never known before. His people had stood together and accomplished what many thought was impossible. They had taken their planet back from invaders and proven that they were a force to be reckoned with. Elias knew that Earth would not rest on its laurels. They would continue to grow, continue to push the boundaries of what was possible, and continue to defend their world from any threat that dared to challenge them. The final message sent from Earth to the rest of the galaxy was clear. Humanity had found its place in the stars, and it was a place no one would dare to invade again. The humans had proven their worth, and the universe would now know that Earth was home to the most resilient, most formidable species to ever exist. Earth had triumphed, and the aliens would never make the same mistake again. The galaxy would soon come to realize that humanity had not just survived the invasion. They had become the apex species, and Earth would stand as a monument to that undeniable fact. The humans had won, and their victory would be remembered for generations to come. Earth's ascendancy, the unstoppable force. The stars in the sky were no longer just distant lights. They were a reminder of what humanity had become. Earth had not only repelled its invaders, but had reshaped its destiny. The alien fleet that once loomed over the planet now lay scattered in the depths of space. Their arrogance had been crushed by a force they never saw coming, by a species they never considered worthy of their attention. As the humans stood together in the aftermath of the invasion, they realized something profound. They were not just survivors of an attack, they were victors. They were not just the defenders of their home, they were a new power in the universe. The alien invaders had thought Earth was a prize, to be claimed, but they had failed to understand that Earth was a place that would never fall. The humans had proven that with every weapon at their disposal, they would protect their world with every ounce of their strength and courage, and they would never bow to any invader again. The galaxy would soon know that Earth was not just a planet to conquer, but a force to be reckoned with. The humans would not be content to remain hidden in the shadows of the stars. They would rise. They would explore. They would push the boundaries of their existence and show the galaxy that humanity was here to stay. The alien races that had once ignored Earth's potential now found themselves questioning their own assumptions. They had underestimated the humans, and that mistake would cost them dearly. The message from Earth was loud and clear. There was no force in the universe capable of overcoming the united strength of humanity. The universe was about to learn what it meant to challenge Earth, but more importantly, what it meant to face humanity in its full power. The humans were not merely a species, they were an unstoppable force. They had faced extinction. They had stared into the eyes of the unknown, and they had come out victorious. Now they stood as the apex predators of the stars, and no one would ever dare to challenge them again. The humans had done it, they had won, and their victory would echo through the galaxies for eternity. Earth was theirs, and with that victory came an undeniable truth: humanity was the future, and the universe would bow to them when the time came. The end.